filed for divorce and regretted it instantly. Em and I had been together for 6 years, married for 4. Everything seemed and downs, nothing that set off any red flags. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect couple. Shared inside jokes, light-hearted arguments over movie choices, planned fun date night. I'd bring her home her favorite takeout when she had a rough day, full little gestures. It felt natural. Like we had figured love out, which is exactly why next hit me like a truck. It all started at about tiny changes at first. The kind of things overlook if you weren't paying close enough attention. But I noticed. Started taking her phone everywhere. Even just walking to the kitchen or folding laundry. She'd leave it sitting on the coffee table with trying to keep things light. I joked, "What, are you running some secret spy operation?" He laughed and said something about more work emails lately. I wasn't sure what she meant by that. But then, just a few days later, the lock screen passed. That threw me. Casually asked why, she brushed it off, mentioning something vague about online security and hacking. I let it go. Didn't want to seem paranoid after all. But the strange behavior didn't stop. She began stepping out of the room to take calls. Something totally. Whenever her phone rang, she'd glance at me and say, "Just a friend from work," before heading out to the porch or into the phone, always flipped face down. That became the new habit. One time, I reached to hand her something and saw her quickly pull her phone away. It happened in a. She started pulling away emotionally too. Conversations that once flowed so naturally now felt strained. Whenever I bring up future, "Where should we go for our anniversary?" or "Should we start saving up for a new car?" brush it off with a vague, "Yeah, we'll see." Before she could shift the topic, everything suddenly clicked for me one random Wednesday. She casually mentioned she was grabbing coffee with a friend after work. Nothing unusual. She did that now and then. Coincidentally, I had errands in the same area and thought, why not swing by and surprise her? Seemed like a cute idea. But when I got there, she wasn't inside the cafe chatting with anyone. Instead, she was pacing outside, phone pressed to her ear, walking back and forth. Something about her body language immediately felt serious, tense. I stayed parked in my car, something telling me not to interrupt. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I caught snippets, phrases like, "It's almost ready" and "starting fresh soon." My stomach dropped. It didn't sound like venting about work or friends' drama. It felt calculated, like something bigger was being planned. When she got home, I asked how coffee went, trying to act casual. Without hesitation, she launched into this detailed story about her friend's boyfriend issues. It felt so rehearsed I had to pause for a second, wondering if she was testing me. Then, completely out of the blue, she threw in, "Hey, I was thinking, maybe we should organize all our account info, passwords, documents, just in case." I tried to keep my expression neutral. "What kind of emergency are you talking about?" I asked. She shrugged, brushing it off. Just being prepared. What if something happens to one of us, or there's a big financial decision we need to make?" On the surface, it sounded logical, but the way she said it, almost like she'd rehearsed it, set every internal alarm blaring. Why now? We'd never talked about joint finances like this before, and we always kept things pretty loose and separate. That night, I couldn't shake it. Her words kept playing in my head. Was I overthinking it? Maybe this was normal adult stuff, and I was reading into it too much. But then I remembered her locked phone, the odd phone calls, the distant behavior. It was all starting to form a troubling pattern. A few days later, she brought it up again. We were in the kitchen, I was making a sandwich, and she casually asked, "Have you thought any more about organizing the bank stuff? Do you know where all the account details are?" I set the knife down and turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" I asked, keeping my tone calm but firm. "You've been mentioning our finances a lot lately. Is there something I should know about?" She looked up from her phone, clearly surprised that I pushed back. "No, nothing's wrong," she said quickly, even forcing a smile. "I just think it's important, for emergencies." "Emergencies like what?" I asked again. She shrugged, her face giving nothing away. "I don't know, life stuff. It's not a big deal, I promise." But it felt vague. Too vague. I nodded, letting it drop outwardly. But internally, the unease was growing. She was clearly avoiding giving me a real answer, and it no longer felt like some innocent suggestion. It felt like she was hiding something. So the next day, while she was at work, I logged into our joint accounts to take a closer look. That's when I noticed something odd. Small withdrawals, nothing huge, but frequent. Over the past month, little amounts had been moved around, and none of it lined up with bills or typical expenses. There were small withdrawals, nothing major, but consistent. They weren't tied to bills, groceries, or any usual expenses, and I didn't want to assume the worst, but something felt off. It looked like she was slowly siphoning money, and I couldn't figure out why. I debated confronting her, but something told me to hold back. If I was wrong, I'd come off as paranoid. But if I was right, well, I had to be careful. It gnawed at me so much that I reached out to someone I trusted, an old college friend who also happens to be a lawyer. I laid everything out for him, trying not to sound like some conspiracy theorist. After I finished, he paused and said, "I'm not saying something's definitely going on, but you're not crazy for wanting to be prepared. If you're worried, now's the time to act. Better to be safe than sorry." He walked me through some simple steps. Nothing illegal, just ways to legally safeguard my assets in case something went south. It felt extreme, almost like I was preparing for battle when I wasn't sure who the enemy was. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If she was planning something, and my gut told me she might be, I couldn't afford to be passive. I had to protect myself. Still, it wasn't an easy choice. This wasn't just about money or paperwork. It was about the life we had built together. Memories kept flashing through my head. Our wedding day, late night talks about the future, all those inside jokes we shared. Was this really what our marriage had come to? Taking these steps felt like waving a white flag, like I was officially admitting defeat. That night, while she was out, I sat at my desk, hands shaking as I opened my laptop. One by one, I pulled up every account, bank, investments, even the deed to our house. Each click felt like another crack in the trust we once had. But I kept reminding myself, this wasn't about betrayal. It was survival. If I had ignored the signs, I might regret it later. I made a checklist of everything I could quietly transfer, assets, documents, without tipping her off. As I typed, the weight on my chest got heavier. I had trusted her completely, and now I was essentially shielding myself from her. Then, I picked up the phone and called my mom. I didn't give her the full story, just enough. I told her I needed to hold on to a few important things for me, just temporarily. She hesitated for a moment, probably trying to read between the lines. Finally, she asked gently, "Are you okay?" I lied. "Yeah, it's just a precaution, nothing you need to worry about." She didn't push, just quietly said, "Of course, sweetheart, whatever you need." I hung up feeling an odd mix of guilt and relief. I hated involving her, dragging her into this mess, but knowing someone was still in my corner made me feel a little steadier. By the time Em got home, everything was already in motion. I'd moved nearly all of my assets, cash, investments, even the house, under my mom's name. I left just enough in the joint account to keep up appearances, but the bulk of it was locked down tight. She didn't notice a thing. Walked in, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I smiled, acted normal, but inside, I was a mess. Part of me felt sick, like I'd crossed some unforgivable line, but another part of me felt relief. And over the next 3 days, I worked hard to keep up a normal routine. I didn't want her to sense that something had shifted. She seemed content, even oddly cheerful at times. But instead of putting me at ease, it only heightened my suspicion. If she was scheming something, she was playing it flawlessly. And what stood out most was that she never mentioned finances again. Not once, even after I directly questioned her. She acted as if the entire conversation had just been erased from her mind. At first, I wondered if maybe I'd overthought it. Maybe she'd let it go because it wasn't important after all. But the more I mulled it over, the more deliberate it felt. Almost like she was purposely avoiding the topic, worried of bringing it up again after realizing I was paying attention. I caught her watching me occasionally, like she was gauging my mood, trying to decide if it was safe to say something. Each time, the moment I noticed, she'd quickly shift her focus, back to her phone, the TV, a book. It wasn't overt, but it was there, lingering. It felt like she was waiting for me to reopen the discussion. But she wasn't about to push it herself. The silence only fed my anxiety. It wasn't like her to just drop a subject she'd previously deemed important, and the way she sidestepped it felt almost intentional. Whatever her plan was, I wasn't about to make it easy for her. I needed to stay one step ahead. Even if I didn't know exactly what was coming, all I could do was prepare. That night, I went over everything again. Every document, every transfer. I double-checked every detail tied to my mother's name. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was airtight, secured in an uncontested trust. I even called my mom one more time to confirm she had all the necessary paperwork. 2 weeks passed, and everything seemed normal. Too normal, honestly. She started acting more affectionate, chatting casually about things she hadn't in months. Her job, what we should cook for dinner, it all threw me off. Made me question whether I'd been too paranoid. Maybe all her strange behavior had just been stress, and I'd blown it out of proportion. I started second-guessing myself. Then, on a random Friday night, she turned off the TV, sat me down, and we need to talk. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what was coming before she even opened her mouth. I think we should get a divorce, she said, her tone flat, almost rehearsed, calm, cold. Her tone wasn't angry or emotional. It was cold, detached, like she was casually informing me we're out of milk. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying, as she calmly laid out her reasoning. She spoke about needing space, wanting time to rediscover herself, how she felt like she'd lost her identity within our marriage. It was the usual breakup script, vague, generic, until she threw in something that made me pause. You know, she said, almost pointedly, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you've ever really appreciated them. I deserve more. That line hit me like a slap. It wasn't just that she wanted to leave, it was the way that she framed it, as if I owed her something, as if everything that had gone wrong was squarely my fault. And now she was simply claiming what was rightfully hers. I sat there, trying to make sense of it, when another question popped into my mind. Why now? Then she added something that made things click. A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly, she said, eyes deliberately avoiding mine. A friend. I stayed quiet, letting her continue, but inside of my head, it was spinning, to say the least. Who was this friend? Why were they so deeply involved in my marriage? The way she mentioned them, it wasn't casual. It sounded rehearsed, like someone had been whispering in her ear, convincing her that leaving me wasn't just an option, but a calculated move she needed to make. And the more she spoke about all these so-called sacrifices, the more skeptical I became. What sacrifices? Wasn't she the one who'd always said she was happy? I replayed everything in my head. When she wanted to move closer to her job, even though it doubled my commute, I agreed. When she signed up for that overpriced yoga retreat, I shuffled our budget to make sure she could go, even if it meant canceling a vacation I've been looking forward to. She changed careers twice, and both times I've supported her, told her to chase what made her happy, because that's what you do when you care about someone. And it wasn't like I was some cold, distant husband. I showed up. I remembered her birthday. I picked up little things she mentioned liking, and when she felt stuck in a rut, I suggested date nights. I listened to her vent about work, friends, family, you name it. I may not have been perfect, tried. I showed up. That's why that I deserve more line cut deep. It wasn't me she was frustrated with. It was something inside her that had shifted. Whether it was this so-called friend influencing her, or something else entirely. I didn't recognize the woman sitting across from me anymore. But I wasn't about to let her rewrite our entire marriage story to suit her own new narrative. So I stayed calm. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Instead, I nodded and gave her something neutral, like, if that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out what comes next. She seemed surprised that I wasn't fighting back, but I didn't care. My mind was already elsewhere, focused on figuring out exactly who or what had caused this sudden shift. This wasn't something she woke up and decided overnight. This had been in the works for a while. It felt like something bigger was at play, and I wasn't about to let it blindside me again. After that conversation, she left to stay at her own apartment, and by Monday morning, the divorce papers landed in my hands. Let me tell you, she wasn't just looking to end things, she wanted everything. Half the house, all the savings, the investments, even the car. She packed in demands for spousal support too, which made zero sense considering her high-paying job. It was clear. She expected to walk away with everything I'd worked for. At first, I chalked it up to anger or bitterness, but the way those demands were so calculated and aggressive, it felt too methodical, like someone had been coaching her. So, I decided to investigate. I knew better than to ask her directly who'd been whispering in her ear. Instead, I took a more subtle route, her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and though that wasn't much of a poster, I sifted through every tag, every comment, and like, looking for a clue. That's when a pattern emerged. The name Jake kept popping up, liking, commenting, nothing overtly flirty, but frequent enough to catch my attention. Curious, I clicked on his profile. At first glance, he seemed harmless, some 30-something marketing guy. But as I scrolled deeper, something stuck out. He'd posted a photo from the exact same cafe where I'd seen her pacing weeks earlier, the same day I overheard her cryptic phone call about starting fresh. That coincidence made my gut tight, and there were more breadcrumbs. A comment under one of her photos saying, "You've got this," in a selfie that appeared to be taken from the balcony of her new apartment. It wasn't hard evidence, but it was enough to make me stop and think. She mentioned a quote-unquote friend who'd been helping her through things, and I had a strong suspicion this was the one. Still, I couldn't just rely on instinct. I decided to reach out to mutual friends, people who might have more insight. First, I messaged Lisa. She and my wife had been close for years, so if anyone knew what was happening, it'd be her. I kept it light, asked if she'd talked to my wife recently, casually prodding to see if she'd mention anything, but Lisa shut me down fast. She claimed she didn't know about any friend and brushed off my question. The way she hurried to end the conversation felt off, like she didn't want to get involved. Not ready to give up, I tried someone else, Emily, another mutual acquaintance. I used the same approach, pretending I was just trying to understand what was going on. She was cautious at first, giving vague replies, clearly uncomfortable, but when I pressed a little harder, she abruptly ended the call. That only raised more red flags. I sat there, frustrated, racking my brain for my next move. Then, to my surprise, Emily called me back. She hesitated at first, saying she had to be sure whatever she told me wouldn't get back to her. I reassured her that it would stay between us, and after a long pause, she finally opened up. Turns out, my wife had been spending quite a bit of time with a guy named Jake, someone she'd met through work. Emily didn't have all the details, but what she did know was that the Jake had been heavily involved in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing his name was like snapping the last piece of a puzzle into place. Suddenly, it was all clear. This wasn't just about her needing space or trying to find herself. Jake wasn't just a bystander. He was actively influencing her every decision. I decided then and there to handle it in my own way. That Saturday, I drove over to her apartment building and parked a block away. I wanted to see for myself if my suspicions were right. Sure enough, a few hours later, she and Jake walked out together. They didn't hold hands, but the way they leaned in close, speaking quietly, it told me everything I needed to know. I stayed in the car and watched as they got into his car and drove off. I didn't need to follow them. The truth was already obvious. She hadn't just fallen out of love with me. She'd been slowly building a new life with someone else. Everything clicked. The sudden distance, the secretive money talks, the aggressive divorce terms. She wasn't just leaving me. She wanted to walk away with everything I had built, and she wasn't doing it alone. I went home that night with my head spinning, the weight of the betrayal sinking in. But beneath all of that anger and hurt was something else, a plan. She thought she was calling all the shots, but she had no idea what I'd already set in motion. The first meditation session was tense from the start. Her lawyer arrived carrying a binder so thick it looked like they were preparing for a corporate lawsuit. He launched right into her demands. Half the house, all the savings, my assets, the car, and some laughable spousal support closet that didn't even match her income level. I sat there quietly, nodding, letting him list everything out. But I was just waiting for my lawyer's turn. When it came, my attorney slid a stack of papers across the table and spoke calmly. Before we proceed, there's something everyone here should take a look at. Her lawyer started flipping through the documents. I watched as his confident demeanor shifted, his brow tightening the deeper he read. What is this? He asked, clearly thrown off, turning towards my attorney. These papers detail the legal transfer of all my client's major assets into a revocable trust under his mother's name, my lawyer replied smoothly. The transfers were finalized weeks before the divorce filing. The room went dead silent. Her lawyer turned to her, now visibly confused and annoyed. You didn't mention any of this, he said flatly. She grabbed the documents from him, flipping through them frantically, her face reddening as she realized the signatures, dates, and notarizations were all legitimate. This can't be real, she muttered, disbelief quickly morphing into fury. She turned to me, her expression darkening. Plan this, she hissed, as if I'd pulled off some unforgivable betrayal. You knew I was going to file, and you set this up just to screw me over? I stayed silent, letting her put the pieces together on her own. Her lawyer, clearly rattled, asked my attorney to clarify the document. My lawyer calmly and methodically walked through them every step, each signature, every date, every notarization perfectly aligned. It was undeniable. The transfer had been completely well before her filing, airtight and unchallengeable. There was no loophole they could use, no legal avenue left. She glared at me, voice tight with rage. Unbelievable, she spat, leaning forward. I can't believe you do this to me. I didn't respond. There was nothing to explain. I hadn't done anything to her. I'd simply protected myself because she made it clear she wasn't walking away quietly. Her lawyer ended the session with a stiff comment about needing to rethink their approach, but we all knew there were no moves left to play. As we left, she caught up with me in the hallway, her expression now a cocktail of fury and desperation. This isn't over, she snapped, voice low and venomous. You're going to regret this. I met her gaze and replied simply, the only thing I regret is trusting you. Things unraveled faster than I expected after that. Almost immediately, she spiraled, meltdown mode, fully engaged. It started with the calls, dozens of them. At first, her tone was controlled, even remorseful. Voicemails saying things like, I think we just need to talk. I know things got messy, but maybe we can fix this? So when I didn't respond, the tone shifted. By the second day, she was going wild. One voicemail filled with sobbing apologies. The next day, full on rage. She'd cry about losing what we had, only to follow it up by screaming accusations, calling me selfish, cold, blaming me for everything wrong in her life. I ignored every message. My lawyer's advice was simple: don't engage. And frankly, I was done playing her game. But she wasn't finished. When the calls and texts failed, she started spreading stories. Mutual friends reached out, confused. Apparently, she'd begun telling people that the entire divorce was fake, that it was some part of an elaborate prank. It didn't take long for cracks in her story to appear. People started asking questions. If this is a joke, why file legal paperwork if it's all a prank? Why hire a lawyer and make such aggressive demands if it wasn't real, when others simply didn't buy her? It was all a joke excuse. She switched tactics. She claimed it wasn't a prank, but rather a test of how strong our relationship was. And when that didn't hold up, she pivoted again, painting herself as the victim. She began telling people that my reaction had shattered the trust in our marriage, that I had taken things way too far and broken what we'd built. At first, a few people bought into her version. I got random emails and messages from acquaintances offering pathetic comments like, wow, I didn't realize she was going through so much. Even her brother lashed out at me saying, you should have just talked things through instead of going nuclear. It was frustrating, but I knew the truth would eventually catch up to her, and it did, thanks to an unexpected ally, an old acquaintance. Let's call him Matt. Matt and I were never particularly close, but we'd always been friendly. A few weeks after the meditation, he reached out of the blue, saying he had something I needed to see. When we met, he pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text screenshots between her and Jake. I was stunned. How do you even get these? I asked, scrolling through the messages. Turns out Matt shared a mutual friend with Jake. This mutual friend had overheard some of Jake's conversations and grew concerned, especially when Jake started bragging about helping her secure her future. It didn't take long for the friend to piece together what securing her future really meant, trying to bleed me dry. Uncomfortable, but staying quiet. He grabbed screenshots of their chats and passed them along to Matt, knowing Matt might have a better chance of warning. Matt handed me the phone, shaking his head. This guy's been hyping her up to take you for everything, making her think he'll be there afterwards. Reading the text made my stomach drop. She wasn't just venting about the divorce. She was actively plotting her next move, step by step, with Jake coaching her. One message from her read, once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms. Jake's reply, don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money. I sat there in disbelief, staring at Matt's phone. This wasn't just some misunderstanding or emotional breakdown. This was cold, calculated, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Matt and went home, mind racing. Everything suddenly clicked. Her distance, her obsession with finances, the aggressive divorce demands. It was all carefully orchestrated, and the text didn't stay private for long. Matt shared them with a few mutual friends, and word spread like wildfire. Her narrative crumbled overnight. People who'd previously been indifferent or even supportive began distancing themselves. Even her closest allies stopped defending her. By the time the divorce was finalized, she had nothing left but her personal belongings. Her lawyer quietly withdrew her complaint, realizing there was no legal ground to stand on. All those bold demands collapsed under the weight of airtight paperwork I'd prepared. The trust I'd set up with my mom, unbreakable. As for Jake, he vanished the moment things unraveled. I wouldn't be surprised if he just used her as much as she used me. From what I gathered, he fed her fantasies of independence and new beginnings. But as soon as it became clear she wasn't walking away with anything, he disappeared. Without Jake propping her up, she unraveled fast. The calls and texts continued, but now they were desperate. No more accusations, just begging. Please, can we just talk? I'll do anything to fix this. You don't have to forgive me. Can't we just settle this and move on? I ignored every message. It was far too late for that. Even her family backed away. Her brother eventually reached out, apologizing for the things he'd said earlier. I didn't know what she was doing to you, he admitted. I'm sorry I ever believed her. As for me, I kept the house. I kept the savings. And more importantly, I finally got back something I hadn't felt in years. Peace of mind. My mom, true to form, showed up with paint buckets and a list of ideas to help me reclaim the space as my own. Life feels like it's mine again. No more walking on eggshells. No more second guessing every little conversation. No more betrayal. She's just a chapter in my story now. One I've closed for good. And the rest, that's mine to write. If you've enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Reddit Family Karma. Thanks for watching.